After drafting Patrick Ewing in 1985, the Knicks' championship hopes were rekindled. But while Patrick made them a perennial playoff team, they couldn't get past the second round. So in 1991, they took another major step.
The New York Knicks are very proud to announce today the appointment of Pat Riley as head coach.
When Pat Riley arrived in New York, he wanted to establish the Knicks as the hardest working, best conditioned, toughest team in basketball.
Well, I remember when our first day of practice, he was setting up trash barrels at each end of the court, and we were wondering why he was doing that. Then we found out, because most guys was running over to the trash barrel and letting it all out.
Riley restored a Knicks tradition, defense.
It was a defensive-oriented, physical, rebounding kind of team, and we played that to the T.
Oakley with the rejection and a hard fall taken by Newman.
We were more of an in-your-face kind of team. You know, no layups. We're gonna put you on your butt.
Down low to Thorpe. Jam blocked by Ewing. Thorpe gets it back. Head fake. He's double teamed. Forces it up. Ewing blocks it again.
And Patrick Ewing, a majestic warrior now inside.
While Ewing anchored New York's rugged defense, he would have plenty of help from the team's co-captain, forward Charles Oakley, whose blue-collar style personified the Knicks.
He was a special player because he did all the dirty work. Most guys don't want to go out there and dive on the floor, don't want to go out there and play hard-nosed physical basketball and bang night in and night out. He loved it. He loved it with a passion. That was his deal.
Riley's Knicks also featured two basketball vagabonds who found a home in New York and a place in the hearts of Knicks fans.
I think John Starks and Anthony Mason kind of epitomized what the Knicks were during that era. Literally, those two guys were fighters just to have a living in the league. And they played with such passion that the fans really related to them. I mean, Mason was a New York guy, so they loved him right away. They loved the tough nastiness. You know, he played with a nasty look on his face. And then Starks, he was such an enthusiastic guy, you know, would dive 3 rows into the seats. He was sort of like an adopted New Yorker. Everybody knew how much this guy wanted to win, and he instantly became a crowd favorite.
In Riley's first season, the Knicks won the Atlantic Division, became known as the league's toughest team, and revived the Garden magic of the early 70s. Knick games once again became a marquee event in New York City.
10 on the 24. Chief deflected by McDaniel. Starts the outlet. Cross the court for Jackson. Behind the back, X-Man.
The whole city fell in love with the Knicks again. And it wasn't Reed and Frazier and DeBusschere, but it was Ewing and John Starks. You know, and the Knicks became significant again.
Though they would lose to Michael Jordan and the Bulls in the playoffs, Riley was building the Knicks into a powerhouse. In 1993, they tied a franchise record with 60 wins and made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. Once again, Chicago was waiting, and the entire city was buzzing with anticipation.
Everybody wanted a ticket, and everybody wanted to be there. It was like going to the best Broadway show.
What you do to get a ticket for this?
I waited online all night. So I had my game 1s, I got game 5 and game 7.
New York captured game 1, sending their fans into a frenzy. And they were a minute away from winning game 2 when John Starks would catapult himself forever in the Knicks lore with a play simply known as the dunk.
We're down to 50 seconds left in the fourth quarter. Starks, yes! What a move by Starks, who was able to sky to the basket.
B.J. Armstrong did what I thought he was going to do, jump to my high side, and the baseline opened up, and I just took off.
But Game 5 brought a more painful memory for the Knicks. It was the turning point of the series.
Ewing for Smith. Smith. Strip. Smith. Stopped. Smith. Stopped again by Pippen. What a play by Scottie Pippen. Final seconds. Jordan for Armstrong. And the Bulls have defeated the Knicks.
For the third year in a row, Jordan and the Bulls would bring New York's season to a bitter end. But Michael's sudden departure after the 1993 season changed the NBA landscape.
Well, the fact that Michael was gone, opened up, I think, the gates for a lot of people's thinking, that this was our chance. We had spent 2 or 3 years together building this team. The core had stayed intact. we've improved, we were smarter, and now this was our chance, and we took advantage of it that year.
In the '94 playoffs, the Knicks dethroned the Bulls in a hard-fought 7-game series. And after all the heartbreak at the hands of Chicago, the taste was that much sweeter. But while one nemesis was conquered, another awaited in the conference finals. The Indiana Pacers and their clutch sharpshooter, Reggie Miller.
Those were wars against Indiana. Those were wars.
5 minutes into the fourth. Here's Miller again. And Reggie Miller in an animated discussion with Spike Lee. Miller pops and hits again. Reggie Miller giving the choke sign to Spike Lee.
When the Knicks lost Game 5 at the Garden, down 3-2, nobody thought the Knicks were going to win Game 6 in Indiana. And I went to Indiana for that game. And I remember with like a minute left, ushers in Indiana were roping off the court because they wanted to keep the fans off the court for their celebration. They're going to the NBA championship. But John Starks got hot.
The Knicks have missed their last 4 shots, and the question is, can they show poise? Shot clock at 4. Here is Starks. John Starks giving the Knicks an 84-76 lead. And Starks tees it up, does it again. A 3-pointer for John Starks, who is on fire. This series is headed back to Madison Square Garden in New York. Game number 7 coming up on Sunday night, 7 o'clock Eastern Time.
This bruising series was now down to 1 game, and Game 7 would come down to 1 play, with the Knicks trailing by a point in the final minute.
Ewing with the pick. Here's Starks.
Obviously, I went in there, got it high off the board, missed it, and I was like, oh man. And all of a sudden, I seen Patrick at the corner of my eye come in.
John Starks with the throw. And the Knicks by 1. 2 and 8/10 seconds to go. And here's Workman for the 3-point shot. And that's over. The New York Knicks get into the NBA Finals to go up against the Houston Rockets beginning Wednesday at the Summit. And they are celebrating here at Madison Square Garden.
The Garden seemed like the roof was about ready to come off the place. The fans were just going bonkers. It was hard getting out of there. I had to wait 2 or 3 hours before I left the Garden that day.
I'll never forget when we finally ended up in the finals. You know, and Patrick, all those years, was able to go step up on that scorer's table, you know, one time. It was a great, great experience.
The Knicks moved on to their first finals appearance in 21 years. They would face the Houston Rockets, and Ewing was matched against another superstar center, league MVP Hakeem Olajuwon. With the series tied at 2, New York fans were ready to erupt in the pivotal Game 5. Still, the Knicks were trailing in the last 2 minutes until they finally exploded.
There's Starks hits a 3, and the Knicks lead by 1. There's Boring for 3, came up short, and Starks feeds it ahead. Harper gets it down, and Mason gives the Knicks a 5-point lead.
New York stood on the brink of its first NBA title since 1973, but would have to win it on the road in Houston. Down by 2 at the end of Game 6, John Starks would have his chance, but Olajuwon's fingertip would change the shot and the course of Knicks history.
Starks for 3 came up short, and it will go to a 7th and decisive game.
If that had gone in, you know, that was the first championship they had won since, you know, back in the glory days and the Holtzman days.
Had that shot go in, you know, it would be Starks Square Garden right now, probably.
Instead, the championship slipped away with a loss in Game 7. And after the following season, Pat Riley stepped down as head coach.
To this day, I have great compassion for Patrick and the guys that I coached that I couldn't do one little thing to get them that ring in '94. You don't get many chances. You just don't. But that's life.
Came so close. The ball could have bounced, you know, either way. To sit there in Houston and hear the celebration, you know, after we lost, it was rough. You know, it was crushing.
After Riley's departure, the Knicks turned to his 33-year-old assistant, Jeff Van Gundy, to lead them into the new era. The contrast between the glamorous Riley and the no-frills, workmanlike Van Gundy couldn't have been more pronounced.
The difference is Pat Riley is Hollywood, you know, he's got the hair slick baggy, you know, pretty boy. You know, Jeff, he's more blue collar, you know, going bald, you know, bags under his eyes, staying in the office till he gets in there early, staying until, you know, real late.
I think it was the New Yorker that described him as, you know, the guy standing out in the rain waiting for the 5 o'clock train back to Babylon. I think that's how come people identified with him. He really was the everyman.
So, I mean, in that way, they're different. But when it comes down to the getting the team ready to play, they're the same because Jeff was definitely a Pat Riley disciple. He believed in a lot of the things that Pat believed in.
As a team, and I'm including the players in this, the last thing they want to do is be congratulated for playing hard anymore. They want to win and win big.
He's a fighter. I mean, he and Riley are much more similar than they look, you know, than you would expect, and it worked.
During Van Gundy's tenure, the Knicks revamped their roster, signing free agent shooting guard Allen Houston and trading Anthony Mason for Larry Johnson.
Larry Johnson was the epitome of what an NBA teammate should be. When players talk about all they care about is winning, very few are believable. Larry Johnson lived and played what he said. He had no use for stats. He had no use for anything but whether he helped the team win or lose.
While Van Gundy kept the Knicks among the NBA's elite, their playoff frustration continued. New York failed to make it past the second round in each of his first 3 seasons.
It was clear at that time that that team, the one with Charles Oakley and John Starks, had run its course.
The Knicks would make more dramatic changes heading into the 1999 season. They traded away veteran mainstays Charles Oakley and John Starks to get younger and more athletic with Marcus Camby and Latrell Sprewell.
Look out, Sprewell! Camby, look at him explode! Oh, what a big dunk for Camby!
They managed to figure out a way that just leaving Patrick being, you know, the centerpiece, having enough pieces around him to remain a strong team, even though they were going through a transition.
Despite their added depth and talent, the Knicks stumbled through the 99 regular season, falling far short of expectations.
It's this kind of out-of-control basketball that has doomed the Knicks time and time again this year.
Jeff knew that his job was on the line, and the players knew that, you know, if they didn't win that year, there were going to be big changes.
Barely making the playoffs as the 8th seed in the East, the Knicks would find themselves facing their arch rivals in the first round, the Miami Heat, now coached by Pat Riley. The teams would end up meeting 4 straight years in the postseason, with each of their ferocious battles going down to a deciding game.
That rivalry, it became one of the greatest rivalries in the history of the game without it ever being a championship rivalry. Every single possession was life or death, and that's how both teams went at it.
With the jumper, he puts it in! Patrick Ewing knocks it down!
The top-seeded Heat were heavily favored to win the 1999 matchup, but the Knicks stunned them by winning Game 1 in Miami.
Blocked by Camby. Camby rejected the Witherspoon shot. Here comes Childs. The lob for Camby.
The underdog Knicks had shown that this series would be as closely contested as all the rest, and the team split the first 4 games. In Game 5 in Miami, New York was down by 1 in the final seconds, with the game, the season, and possibly Van Gundy's job on the line.
Van Gundy calls a play a triangle. That usually means something for Ewing. Allen Houston.
Houston ducks under. Got it! With 8 tenths left. And the New York Knicks have become the second team in NBA history to knock off a number 1.
Ignited by the miracle in Miami, the Knicks cruised through the second round, sweeping Atlanta in 4 straight. Along the way, a new folk hero had been born at Madison Square Garden, Coach Jeff Van Gundy.
Everybody had heard the rumors that, you know, Jeff might be gone if the Knicks didn't make a playoff run. And when it became obvious that they were going to make a run, yeah, the fans at the Garden started to chant Jeff's name.
It was real spontaneous thing, and it was very emotional. I remember, you know, Jeff's wife, Kim, she would sit directly across the bench, and she was bawling uncontrollably. And I think Jeff saw her, and he took, you know, he had to take a sip of Diet Coke because he was about to break down.
There's not many things you remember for life. Very, very, very few things, particularly professionally. That one will stick with me close and dear to my heart forever.
The Knicks' run was expected to end in the conference finals against the rival Pacers. And after winning Game 1, they dropped Game 2 in heartbreaking fashion.
2 seconds to go the length of the floor. Oh, Ewing has it for the open shot. Not tonight, Patrick.
Things looked even more bleak the following day when the word came that Ewing had torn his Achilles tendon and would be out for the rest of the playoffs. But even without Patrick, the Knicks battled down to the wire in Game 3 at the Garden. Down by 3, with control of the series at stake, their hopes rested with Larry Johnson.
Inside of 10 seconds to go. Antonio is there. Johnson fires, fouled, hit it! He hit it! He hit it! He was fouled and he hit it! Larry Johnson rose up and he was fouled on the shot. He tied it at 91. It's unbelievable. Madison Garden has erupted in celebration.
That is one of the greatest shots ever in sports. It was like a religious experience. The noise was so loud that your eardrums were popping. I mean, at one point you couldn't even hear anymore.
The big thing about that shot is it wasn't just that he made the three-point shot. He then had to step to the line and make the foul shot. That was as money a foul shot as anybody has made on the Knicks in the 90s, and he stepped up to the line and knocked it down, and it's still one of the most memorable shots in Knicks history.
In Game 5, they would once again stun the Pacers on their home court, taking a 3-2 lead, and they carried the momentum back to New York for Game 6. Finishing off the Pacers, New York completed another upset, doing what no team had ever done before.
And NBA history has just been made. The New York Knicks are the first 8 seed to ever make the NBA Finals.
But the '99 Finals would symbolize so many other seasons in this era of Knicks basketball, with their high hopes falling just short of a title. Yet the 90s would still be remembered as a time of countless thrills for New York fans. In 2003, the curtain officially closed on this chapter of franchise history. 11-time All-Star Patrick Ewing received an emotional send-off as his jersey was raised to the Garden rafters.
When I first came here, I used to look up there, you know, I wonder one day will my number be up there with all these great players, Willis, Earl, Clyde, you know, the Bush, all these guys, you know, they were all great Knicks, and to be, you know, up there sitting in their presence, it means a lot. It's very satisfying, it's very warm. I'm very proud.
You guys don't know how great it feels to be here tonight, because no matter where I go, I can't get away from New York, because you guys are everywhere. Y'all are everywhere. You always come up to me and let me know that y'all appreciate me. If I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't want to play nowhere but in New York for you guys. I always will be a Knick, I always will be a New Yorker. Thank you very much.